Oh yeah, I gotta catch my breath here. Wow. Thank you, Jack and Dorothy. Oh, wow. So are we blessed or what here in this community? And the music is just fabulous today with the duet and then the violin in our choir. And thank you, Jack, for pulling it all together. So here we are, Thanksgiving week already. And it's great to be back with you. And how many of you, this is your favorite holiday? A few of you, yeah. I said some maybes over there. One thing I really like about Thanksgiving is that we join this collective consciousness of counting our blessings. You know, there's this collective consciousness of that this week, right? So we can tune into that and join that and enjoy the expansion of that. Counting our blessings and slowing down and enjoying the harvest of good in our lives. I think I heard that in a song early, the harvest of good. The people, the laughter, the connections. Slowing down to savor the richness of the season. In case we need a reminder, slowing down to be in the present moment, right? Because that's where life is. This is where God is, in the present moment. You'll get there in divine time, right? So we give thanks for our wonderful spiritual home, where hearts are warmed and the spirit gets tickled. My spirit gets tickled. So going back to the cornucopia, this is the horn of plenty. This is one symbol and sometimes a decoration that I really enjoy around this time of year, because it just speaks to that overflowing abundance in life and reminding us of the abundance in our lives as well. And if we think of our lives as a cornucopia of experience with, practicing gratitude, it invites us to give thanks for all that shows up in our life basket. The juicy tomatoes and the sour grapes. That's a little harder sometimes, isn't it? And the hollow gourds and the hearty gourds, everything that shows up. So while it's easy to be grateful for what we call good in our lives, how can we be thankful for all that shows up in our life basket? That is a spiritual practice, isn't it? That will stretch us. So unconditional happiness was one of our discussions in our last Untethered Soul class the other night. And it was a great discussion because we were asked to try on this question. What if you could be happy no matter what? What if you could be grateful no matter what? I think the Dalai Lama, he is always laughing. He is always smiling. And if you think about his past and what he's been through, living in exile in his country torn apart with devastation, destruction, he wrote a book on happiness, The Art of Happiness. So have you noticed that when you're feeling happy, you're not fearful? That happiness and fear cannot occupy the same space. That's what our untethered journey has been about these last few weeks, of freeing ourselves from fear and those mental limitations that we may put on ourselves to stay in that little tight space when there's so much more. Spirit is calling us to so much more in our life. God is bubbling up inside of us to come out more. And we just say yes. And have you noticed that when you're focusing on what you're grateful for, that you feel happy? So happiness and gratitude go hand in hand. And they are gifts found in the present moment that free us from the tangle of regret of the past and worry about the future. Right? The Dalai Lama says, there are only 2 days in the year when nothing can be done. One is called yesterday, and the other is called tomorrow. Today is the right day to love, believe, do, and mostly live. So a grateful heart is a heart that's free to love, to give, to receive, to live, open to that life energy to come through, that spirit energy to come through, to enliven and unfold us into that greater God expression we were created to be. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, I love this. He says, Thanksgiving will keep the heart fresh, for true thanksgiving is like rain falling upon ready soil, refreshing it and increasing its productiveness. So Thanksgiving is part of the abundance and being in that flow of abundance. He also said, praise and thanksgiving impart the quickening spiritual power that produces growth and increase in all things. Yes. So if you find yourself fearful and waiting for the light at the end of the tunnel, start lighting up the tunnel with gratitude. St. Augustine, I love this too. He said, light, though it passes through pollution, is not polluted. So that light within you is pure. And to let it lead your way can pass through anything that the outer world might have. The Christ in us cuts through any confusion, cuts through any pollution. And Jesus said, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you will have the light that leads to life. So we have that divine compass within it, that Christ within that lights the way that we need to just call forth into action. A woman came up to me once in church, and she kind of stomped her foot and declared, I want a blessing that's not in disguise. I loved her honesty. How many of you can relate to that? It's just a reminder that spiritual growth is always pulling us to go beyond what we know, go beyond our comfort zone, to see things a little more expansively. And sometimes that's not always comfortable, is it? But you are hardy spiritual travelers here, living at the edge of love and expanding into that more and more. So, one Sunday in church, a number of years ago, I was giving a similar lesson about finding the blessings in all. And one of our congregants was dealing with some pipes that had burst in her home and done some flooding while she was away. And she was an older woman who lived alone, and she kind of prided herself on being independent and self-sufficient. But this was really kind of bothering her. And she was feeling a little overwhelmed. And so she really wrestled with this, what is the blessing in this? My house is a huge mess. But step by step, she took the steps that were hers to take, making those phone calls for the flood mitigation, the plumber, the contractor, the flooring, all of that stuff, insurance. And a couple of weeks later, she came to church with a secret smile on her face. And she said, I tried that gratitude thing, and I am grateful that only part of the house flooded and not the whole house. I am grateful that the insurance is covering everything. And let me tell you about the plumber. How she tells it. She said, when I opened the door, I was speechless. The handsomest man was leaning on the door jamb, looking at me with the kindest eyes. And at first I was confused, and I thought, why is Sam Elliott coming to fix my house? Because he looked just like that actor. Well, fast forward, she and her plumber were married. I love hearing stories like this, Spirit works in mysterious ways. God works in mysterious ways. So, whenever something doesn't go as expected, it's, our initial reaction, it's natural to have an initial reaction of, worry or fear or anger or impatience. But when we remember that we have a choice, and happiness is a choice, and gratitude is a choice, looking for the blessings is a choice. And when this happens to me, I always it makes me pause, when things don't, because usually things go pretty smoothly, but when something odd happens, that I always stop and say, all right, God, what are you up to? What are you up to here? So we can get curious, what is on the other side of this? Why am I was supposed to be this way and suddenly I'm going here? What's going on? I'm paying attention. Yeah. So to be open and receptive to looking for and seeing the good on the other side of an unwanted experience. That's gratitude 2.0. Yeah. The Apostle Paul told us to give thanks in all circumstances. Well, that's pretty easy on Thanksgiving Day, right? Maybe when we're focused on that, but if you're in between jobs or you're going through a difficult relationship experience or a health challenge or mourning the loss of a loved one, it can be really tough. So give thanks in all circumstances? Are you serious, Paul? But thinking about that, he wrote this while he was in prison. Cold, hungry, his toes had frostbite. And note this, he didn't say we should be thankful for a bad situation, but rather to be grateful regardless of the circumstance. And so despite his harsh circumstance, he gave thanks to God for his life. And in his letters, he wrote, "Thanks be to God," over and over again. Thanks be to God. So that's going to inspire us to remember that we too can find the strength that transcends any temporary emotion or temporary misfortune, because this too shall pass, whatever we're facing. And we too can practice living from a grateful heart. So we've all had times when life hits the fan and all seems to be scattered. I think we went through this collectively, right? 2.5 years ago or so. So we can't always be happy for what happens, but we can feel good about how we handle a situation and how we cope with it. Because challenging times require more energy, more affirmation, more tenderness, and self-compassion, and self-care, and support. So to remember that we have this inner source, this inner resource, the Christ within that is fully primed and ready and never gets tired, never wears out. And we can call forth that wealth of resource within us in the good times and in the challenging times. No matter how painful a situation, we're never disconnected from God, the source of love. We're always connected to the love of God, the wisdom of God, the joy of God. And in any moment we can summon that spiritual strength for whatever is before us and know that the Christ within will rise to meet it victoriously. The Christ within is unconquerable. It's eternal. It's right here within you. I read a story of a man named Henry who was robbed on a city street. And he cried out, but no one was around to help him. And he was very shaken. And as the thieves just disappeared into the distance, he was asking himself these questions. He was wondering, well, how should I react? With bitterness at the lack of police protection? Should I be angry at God? Should I react with indifference? And so he paused. He paused, and then he found himself kneeling in prayer with this prayer. Lord, I thank you that I have never been robbed before. And I thank you that even though they took all I had, it was not much. Next, I thank you that though they took my money, they did not take my life. And finally, I thank you that I was the one being robbed and not the one doing the robbing. So if we're willing to look, there's always something to be grateful for. In all things, give thanks. So practicing gratitude, that's our invitation this week, especially. It's how we hone our spiritual vision. It keeps us centered. As Plato said, a grateful mind is a great mind. It eventually attracts to itself every great thing. So to look for the blessings, even in difficult times. As I was thinking about this, I was remembering a scene with my daughter and one of my grandsons who was 11 at the time. And there had just been a death in the family and our hearts were breaking. But my grandson, he's in middle school, he says, let's get a football and play catch. I don't know how to throw a football, but I said, all right. So we went to a park and I threw it and, he had to get it. He says, you throw like a grandma. So I'm like that. I said, well, that's my T-Rex. And we just ended up just being silly in the moment with that football. Just laughing and laughing and laughing. Like the sun broke through the clouds, So in that present moment is where the sun can break through the clouds when we're open. So grateful for it all. Lots of words in there. And that word opposed down at the end, that's curious, isn't it? Well, it's kind of like an opponent that helps us get stronger. You know, like I think of tennis. We have tennis players here, right? You have someone who's hitting the ball in and you learn how to, you know, move and deal with it, and you get stronger. Great mind is a grateful mind. And it eventually attracts to itself every great thing. So this day we remember, I invite you to remember that you have greatness within you. You have the greatness of God within you. And let us close by appreciating the horn of plenty in our life and the heart of plenty within, as we give thanks for the cornucopia of God's goodness that each of you, each of us brings to the table of humanity. Your abundance of love, of joy, of kindness, of wisdom. We give thanks for the life lessons and the strength grown from the compost. For we don't grow without it. And we give thanks for the ever-flowing unfoldment of God's goodness and greatness in our grateful hearts, knowing that gratefulness leads to great Godfulness. And so it is.